Well, you're still watching the AM show. We thank you for staying. Let's get into some of our big issues this morning. Sometime last year, I think in April, there were conversations about amending the Criminal Offences Act to make corruption a felony, criminalize private corruption acts, and domesticate international anti-corruption conventions that Ghana has signed. Well, just very recently in Parliament, I guess because of all the other matters, this hasn't come up. There was some amendment made to the Criminal Offences Act. Our parliamentary correspondent Joseph Akable is Joseph Opoku Gakpo, I beg your pardon, is joining us via Zoom so we can talk about this matter and some other matters that have come up. Indeed, we discussed bits of it during the review, but we're getting into a lot more details. So Joseph Opoku Gakpo, thanks for coming back on this matter. This bit about the amendment is something that is not widely known. Explain what has happened to the Criminal Offences Act.
So this is just about, this is just the day before yesterday, just that it happened late into the evening, some at 6 p.m. So it's not one of the items that a lot of people paid attention to. Now what happened is that earlier this year, the Attorney General introduced an amendment bill to Parliament to amend the original Criminal Offences Act, which details crime generally and the kind of sentences that should be applied when people commit various crimes. And what that document, which is, Mama, you could correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's legislation that's dating back to the 1960s.
Exactly.
So what happens is that then when you look at corruption specifically is something that was described as a misdemeanor, meaning it's not a very much high-level crime. So someone commits an act of corruption and per the prescriptions that had been contained in the original Criminal Offences Act. When that person is taken to court and the individual is found guilty, then the person will be sent to jail probably for somewhere around 2 years because it's considered a misdemeanor. You recall that a lot of civil society groups have repeatedly been campaigning that there was the need for us to change corruption status from a misdemeanor so that then it's a higher crime. So among others, that's what that bill that was brought to Parliament earlier in the year sought to do. It was laid by the Attorney General. There was a second reading some time ago of it when they discussed the principles of the bill. Some amendments were made to it and eventually it was passed on Tuesday night, late Tuesday night by Parliament. And now corruption is considered as a felony. What that means is that when you commit an act of corruption and you are sent to court and the trial ends, you could go to jail for as much as 25 years. And the entire conversation is that the objective of this is to discourage people from wanting to engage in corruption. And on the floor of Parliament, the MP rightly made the point that both when it comes to members of the public generally and politicians and civil servants, they should know that any act of corruption could come with very extreme sanctions compared to what existed before. So they would want this to serve as a deterrent so people avoid engaging in corrupt acts, except that there's been the attempt to point some holes into that. The point being that from the observation of a lot of the MPs for many years, no one has specifically been convicted of a specific act of corruption. So maybe someone may engage in a corrupt act and will be taken to court, and then things may be pointed out like forgery, things like, theft of public funds, charges like deceiving a public officer, charges like causing financial loss to the state are what are usually slapped on people who engage in alleged acts of corruption. But that specific charge of corruption is something that has been a very long time since anyone got convicted of that specific charge of corruption. And so then the point was being raised about whether this was really important. But essentially, the lawmakers are hoping that this will serve as a deterrent to any individuals who may be interested in engaging in corrupt acts.
Very, very interesting. So this has essentially been passed.
So what we are waiting for now is that it will receive presidential assent. So Parliament, after doing the necessary amendments to the bill and approving it in the House, will communicate it officially to the office of the President that Parliament has gone ahead to do this. And then once that is done, then the President will sign it into law, and then it becomes operational soon after the President signs it into law. So right now, that's what we are waiting for, that it will be communicated to the Presidency for the President to then sign it into law for it to become law in the country.
Okay, great. Joseph, I want us to go back to the matter of the Infanteman Member of Parliament and go back to when the Interior Minister appeared before Parliament. People were quite not happy because it didn't look like he had addressed the general insecurity issues, matters that people had on security, but specifically just addressed the issue of the NP. The reason the 200 police officers were announced that they were going to be protecting our members of Parliament. But the Interior Minister is back in Parliament today. Explain why he's coming back and which committee he's appearing before.
So we gather that even before the issue of the Infanteman constituency and the death of the MP came on, there had been a conversation between the Committee on Defense and Interior, chaired by Senator Champong, the MP from Karaso, and the Interior Minister, Ambusderi, for him to appear before the Committee on Defense and Interior and brief MPs on efforts to enhance security in the nation generally as we approach the election period, as we approach Christmas. So that meeting had been scheduled some weeks ago to allow for the minister to appear before the Committee on Defense and Interior. Now, what happened is that even before that, then the issue of the death of the Infanteman MP became public, and then the Speaker went ahead to direct that the Minister for Interior shows up on the floor, come respond to various questions. And so, and that was a closed-door meeting, except that the House generally sat as a committee of the whole, so it was a closed sitting that didn't have the press present. And a lot of the focus was on improving security for MPs, we gather. There was a bit of the conversation around what is being done to improve general security in the country. And so when we spoke to the Minister for Interior after that closed-door session, he pointed to how they had made the necessary efforts to reach through the police service. There's been the addition of, I think, about 3,000 men over the last 3 years. They've gotten logistics, including more vehicles and all. They are expanding on Operation Calm Life and a few other things. So from what the minister told us, he made the effort to brief MPs as well on what is being done to enhance general security in the country. But the Committee on Defense and Interior is still insisting that at the level of the committee, we want to probe those issues further. They want to ask more questions, particularly when it comes to security ahead of the election. They want to get more firm assurances from the minister that the police and the Interior Ministry has the security situation of the country under control. And so we're expecting that later today, the Interior Minister will be appearing before the Committee on Defense and Interior to respond to questions on some of those. This will again be a closed-door session, but usually as we seek to get those details, once it's done, we will get details of whatever may have transpired in the meeting from both the Interior Minister and also the Committee on Defense and Interior members. We can only hope that these plans will eventually unfold, because a lot of things have been happening. There is the ongoing conversation around the 1 week celebration of the death of the Infanteman MP, which may be taking the attention of MPs. We also know that a lot of the MPs are in their constituencies campaigning and all, but then we're hoping that the Committee on Defense and Interior will make time for this particular session with the Minister for Interior to discuss those specific issues.
And then just have the final bit on this is the Fomena MP that we've discussed. Parliament is yet to decide in terms of the petition that the NPP say they presented to Parliament. So the final bit of it, but you mentioned to us earlier that this is not even somebody who is necessarily active on the floor, even though he may be active on the committee side. So we don't know whether or not he himself is going to be showing up in Parliament.
It's very much unclear, except that what we know for certain now is that he remains an MP until the processes are declared, the process are triggered to declare his seat vacant. Just to put all this in a bit of context, we were having this conversation yesterday about how he decided to then go independent following his disagreement with the party. Apparently, he didn't even contest the NPP primary in the constituency. Andrew Amakwe-Siama had actually accused the chairman of the NPP in the Ashanti region, Bernard Ntubu, and his constituency chairman of scheming to remove him and put a different candidate there as MP. And so his complaint had been that even the album that was to be used for the upcoming process had been tampered with and they didn't have the right people on the list. And so sometime in February this year, even before the NPP went in for their primaries, he issued a communique and indicated that he will not be contesting in the primary and he will decide what to do with himself afterwards. It's similar to the situation that happened in the Bushegu area with Dr. Ziblimidi withdrawing from the contest and withdrawing from seeking re-election, which was actually the same kind of scenario. And then after that, he's now decided that he's going independent. Waiting for the processes to be triggered, but he was elected for a 4-year term. The party has decided to expel him. A number of things could happen, and it will depend very much on the extent of pressure that the NPP may want to pile on the speaker and the majority leadership to get the MP out of the house, because it could as well happen that the speaker may not exactly trigger the processes and everyone could decide that let's allow sleeping dogs to lie at least for the next 4 weeks or so, that the house will be sitting. Even when the seat is declared vacant, there's no way by-election can be held for the candidate to be replaced because we are too close to the next election. So just maybe, again, at the discretion of the speaker, he may just decide to let sleeping dogs lie. But we've not gotten any formal communication on when the speaker may trigger the processes. And it's even very much unclear whether the said letter has gotten to the office of the speaker and to the attention of the speaker. But we wait to see when those processes will be triggered in order to get him removed and his seat declared. But the final point, Mamavi, one thing is clear, that even if the seat is declared vacant, he will be entitled to his ex gratia to the tune of the duration that he served as member of parliament. You know that it's usually calculated based on the number of months you've served in parliament, and a percentage of the salary over the duration is added on, which then constitutes your ex gratia. For the period that he served, even if the seat is declared vacant from now, for the 3 years, 10 months or so, he's going to earn that bit of it and take home. But once it's declared vacant, then all other privileges he also has MP will be revoked.
And I've just been looking at how active he's been in Parliament. Apparently, he is the vice chairperson of the Privileges Committee and also on the Lands and Forestry Committee of Parliament. He's a legal practitioner as well, having served also as a surveyor, because he studied surveying practice with the Institute of Surveyors with some other educational background from the KNUST. So a bit about the man that we've just been talking about. Joseph Opoku-Gakpo, I guess we'll have to leave it here and wait to see. So a few things that we're following up in Parliament, just real quick before we wrap up today.
So the House has been dealing with what they call the Complementary Agency Bill, the Complementary Education Agency Bill, which seeks to set up an agency to oversee non-formal education and all. That has been engaging the attention of the MPs a lot, waiting to see how much progress they will make on that. They're also trying to get out what is described as the Real Estate Agency Bill, which has been on the other paper for a while now. It's come to the House, they've done the first reading, some amendments are to be done to it. Now, that bill will seek to regulate the activities of those who serve as real estate agents. and will require that they have some form of training and qualification before they can get into this.
Okay.
A body will be established to oversee the activity, so they are more professional and all. And what are the two priority things that the House is looking at even over the next few days? All
right. Joseph Opoku-Gakpo, really appreciate you breaking down the issues for us this morning here on the show.